Welcome to the first episode of our as yet unnamed podcast. We will at some point work out a name for it. But welcome to episode 1. This is a new departure for us. We're all really excited about it, and I think you can see how excited we are by the looks on our happy little faces. So we are going to be talking about a few things later on. We're going to talk a little bit about Salt Cafe, some new stuff there. On camera, I think at the moment you can probably see James Rolling and Adam.
Hello.
Hello, and myself, and James Munro is lurking off camera.
Okay.
There we are, he's managed to get his hand off camera. We'll see a little bit more of James a little bit later on, but we're all here. We're going to have a little bit of a chat about what's happening. We've got some stuff coming up. We'll talk a bit about that as well. But I think the main thing we're going to do in a few minutes' time is talk about Salt Cafe and some of the changes we've been making there. Is that right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. But before we get to that, you have some questions for us, I believe.
Yeah, we have to catch up because it's 6 podcasts, so we've got to be vaguely social.
Okay.
So we have met once or twice before.
Yes.
I thought I'd ask actually if anyone's heard any other good podcasts recently. This is going to be the best one.
Just to clarify on this, do we get endorsements from them? Is this worth money to us?
That's what you say.
If we mention other podcasts? The only other podcast I listen to with any level of consistency is The Rest is History. Which probably doesn't surprise you.
The solid recommendation from the team.
As a podcast that I might go to, but that's it for me.
Thanks. Any great episodes recently?
I'm quite enjoying the bit about the French Revolution.
Cool.
Which shows you, if you do listen to The Rest is History, quite how far behind I am. But Custer's Last Stand was good. I enjoyed that. I mean, obviously Custer's Last Stand wasn't good, but talking about Custer's Last Stand was good.
I didn't think we'd get into moral statements on Native Americans this early on.
I think we're better off avoiding the language of Native Americans as well. Yeah, no.
Educate me afterwards.
Yeah.
James, let's turn to you.
Not a good word.
Every day's a school day, Adam. Well, I'm not really a podcast listener. I mean, I haven't heard the podcast that you like, James, but I do like Dominic Sandbrook's books, who does that podcast. I suppose the only thing that's vaguely podcasty, I don't know whether this counts, is my wife and I, Emma, and I often listen to Simon Mayo's Confessions podcast, if that counts.
Well, it's a podcast.
It's a podcast, yeah, so we catch up with that sometimes.
Good.
Nice. So we won't be being paid by Simon Mayo because we're not sure if it's a podcast or not.
I don't think he needs our endorsement.
He's doing quite well on his own, isn't he?
Lovely stuff.
Yourself?
I am a massive lover of The Rest is History, as I think everyone is sick of hearing by now. I've just discovered Ellis James and John Robbins wittering away, and they're entertaining. They were chatting to Simon and Mark Commode about their film choices recently to see if they were up to scratch. So that was a nice bit of a witter and a lovely Welsh voice. Thanks. Any great days off recently? Because people don't know what we do when we're not here. Or while we're here, really.
Don't know what we do while we're here. Any great days off? I've had a couple of nice days in the garden recently.
Very nice, yeah.
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah.
Me and Aoife came round to visit the kittens and you were in some heavy gardening.
I was in the middle of
happy man.
Yeah. Go outside where possible. Yeah.
So I've been getting outdoors. I've been I've found a little race loop for the bike for a Monday afternoon, which is just from us on Barley Close up over Holbrook Hill and down Red Lane, which is a bit more demanding than I've got the skills for at the moment, but it's really good fun. James?
Oh, well, I took a day off on a different day to my usual day off because I'm doing my lay reader course every few Saturdays, as you know, and so one Friday I went to the Great British Car Journey Museum up in Ambergate, which I can heartily recommend. And they had some new exhibits, the first ever Toyota, #1 Toyota off the production line in Burnaston back in the early 90s, I think it was. It's now in the museum. So there you go. That's my tourism tip for everybody.
What do they think of your very big blue, not old, not British car?
I have had some nice comments. Yes, but yes, the Mustang did. That was my mode of transport up to the museum. Yes, it's often pictured outside the museum there.
Very good. Lovely. I think it's time we got on to more important matters.
Yeah. Sorry for anyone who's been listening to this podcast to actually learn anything.
It's kind of like a staff meeting, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you know where to go on your day off and what to listen to.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your patience. We have moved around slightly and we're now ready to talk about our main item for today. Our main item today is talking about some of the changes that have been made to our youth work and particularly the changes that we brought in on a Sunday evening with Salt Cafe. So what's happened to Ignition, I suppose, is the first question.
Good question. Yeah, we no longer meet on a Wednesday night, which is really sad and also lovely because we're enjoying home group, which is awesome. That's a big shift for us, so we get to go and be childish there rather than in the hall. And have about the same number of biscuits so far.
But a greater number of children, so we're paying out one thing to gain in another area, you know?
Yeah.
Slightly less physically active games, but far more pizza at the very least.
Yeah, the real joy of Salt Cafe is that it's not on a school night.
Yeah.
So you don't have to get up in the morning. Quite all you do it's Sunday night, but it works out a little bit better. So some of our big commuters can get along to Salt Cafe better than they could to Ignition. So we're loving getting everyone along to that.
So, when is Salt Cafe?
That's a good question. It's 6 p.m. till 7 on a Sunday evening in the church hall. At that point, parents can decide whether to collect their children because they love and miss them, or leave them for the evening service because they love and want them to learn more.
Yeah.
All parents can come and sit separately.
Yeah, sit separately, yeah. So, and it's for 11 to 18 year olds?
Yes.
Yeah. And then the service is open to all ages and it's 45 minutes long and you're all welcome to come. We're currently working through the Book of Judges. At 7 o'clock, you're welcome to join us for that. Tea and coffee are on the tables at all times. So we've moved it to then, partly, as you've already mentioned, because some of our young people had just some really difficult logistics for coming in the week. Why else have we moved it?
So school nights are hot real estate, but also we really want to say Sunday's a brilliant day to be at church together. And our, I think, can we say new and revamped evening service?
Yeah, I think we can. I think we can emphasise the new and revamped evening services at 7 o'clock.
They're not just shorter but better than ever.
I saw fairy lights and decorations last time, so
We
some level of improvement has happened.
Yeah, we kitted the hall out for harvest, especially for the evening service.
Yeah, and we've established the 45-minute cut-off well enough that if anyone does go over, you can walk out and people will know why.
Although, to be clear, no one has gone over.
Not yet.
I need to check the clock in the hall. In that case, that's fine.
Yeah.
No one's gone far over.
No one's gone over by my watch.
Oh, okay.
Well,
but then yours is a little fast.
I haven't gone over by my watch, which is the main consideration here. Oh, we're probably not supposed to be talking about that, are we? We're really supposed to be talking about Salt Cafe. So let's try and get back to Salt Cafe. So they come along at 6 o'clock. Our young people come along at 6 o'clock on a Sunday evening. So Salt Cafe used to be once a month, didn't it? Back in the day.
Yeah, and
back in the distant past.
Wasn't enough for us. So we're now, every time there's an evening service, Salt Cafe will also be on. We're pausing very soon for half term.
That's right, we've got a week for half term.
Straight after. People rock up, they have a chat to their friends, they settle in for the evening, they watch me frantically roll around the kitchen, which is entertaining.
Yeah.
I maintain that I'm genuinely a really good cook, but it is quite a challenging time to showcase that.
So I think the challenge more comes from the fact that half the children don't want to consume anything that's green or a vegetable, so it's very often a game of bribery.
So the other big change is that Salt Cafe used to be send us your children and we'll give them all sorts of dietary complaints with supermarket pizza. And we're aiming higher than that. We've really raised the bar. We've had some burritos so far with a hot sauce that had mixed reviews, and we've had a pasta bake with ingredients hand reared in the Gray's Garden.
I mean, I think over the years that you've both been here, I think we've tried some really quite brave things in youth work. But I think departing from pizza to vegetables is, I think that's possibly the bravest thing we've done.
Possibly. It's revolutionary levels of youth work, I think, really.
So we'll see if anyone's back next week or not.
Yeah. Good. All right, I've probably got some other questions I'm supposed to ask you at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So, highlights so far?
Well, biggest highlight for me has been seeing the return of one of our youths who we hadn't seen for a little while, not for lack of desire of being there, but more just because of timing. So it's been lovely having her there. She offers a very calming presence to quite an active and excitable group. But also the fact that we've managed to maintain relationships with one of our youths, one of our non-Christian youths, who've been coming along with another youth of ours, who has continued to come along despite the fact that change in time, and obviously even stayed through for the service, which has been hugely encouraging to see.
Yeah, no, that has been good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really lovely. The two who've stayed a good few times in the service have really made me laugh. They've been ace. It's a part of the Bible that I think really suits them as well, because it's gory drama.
Yeah, it's on the violent side. Yes,
I'd say so. Yeah. I'd like to kind of watch most weeks to see how much of the violence they're picking up, and how much they just hear their name. Like, did we have Cushan Rishathaim?
Cushan Rishathaim. Yeah.
I'm secretly really pleased that now
His
it's
kingdom is called
double evil.
Arab Narathaim. So that's just a tongue twister, isn't it? Really?
We'll be talking more Tolkien later on in the show.
Next week we'll do the whole episode in Elvis.
Got some work to do.
Yeah.
But also, these guys get on really well. It sounds like a really big, scary age range, 11 to 18. Maybe not to all of our listeners. Maybe that sounds like they're all tiny little things. But that's a big gap, and I'm always really impressed with how well our groups have got on with each other. And one of them, who for ages was at the really young end and was doing a good job keeping up for a little while, is now at the massively old end.
Yes.
And is getting to be kind of almost 12, because he wasn't at the time, and that is making me laugh a lot. So I'm loving that. Yeah, they've coped with the change and settled in.
Good.
Yeah.
That's excellent. And so, what does the future hold? What do we think the future is going to look like for us Hot Cafe?
It's a great question. I think the ideal would be, obviously, that we'd see God continue to grow the youth work and the numbers. That's, I think, a desire of almost every youth group around the country. I think it would be exciting to continue to grow that fellowship, to possibly continue to draw more of them into doing one-to-one stuff as well, to personally develop that level of fellowship with them outside of just a large, wider activity. I think in terms of our wider activity, we've discussed things like some sort of weekend away or a trip, something of some sort. Obviously we've had to put that on pause last year because the more traditional ones are harder to run than they used to be when I was younger, at the very least. And now actually we're talking about something maybe like going camping or doing some more social stuff with the youth work around us, which would be quite positive.
I had some rumours about camping, which obviously not for a few months.
Oh, you just stuff them all in a tent somewhere in the countryside. No one can hear them scream. No.
just following up on one-to-ones, because obviously what we used to do on Wednesday night, I think, because I came along a few times, was there'd be a bit of teaching, reasonable bit of teaching, wouldn't there?
Sometimes slightly too much.
Well, and obviously this 6 to 7 slot on a Sunday is a social slot, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very laid back. There's no
because the teaching is coming at the evening service. I think we mentioned the evening service. Do we need to?
Maybe plug it again.
So that's obviously a shift, but I think part of the way we're addressing that in terms of making sure that there is teaching targeted particularly at the young people is shifting towards the one-to-ones, which we've been doing for a little while. And I think our goal would be that everyone in that 11 to 18 age group is offered a one-to-one. And sometimes there might be 1-to-2s. But that's our sort of pattern for youth work, which I think, from what you've said to me, is partly a discipleship thing, but there's also practicalities, isn't it, really? That thing about availability, which is, it's not like the old days where you used to come home from school with nothing to do. That's not how it seems to work anymore.
We have a lot of very busy young people. And then the challenge of finding the time that works for them, and the corner of Costa or the church hall or whatever that we can find is it's a bit tricky sometimes. But it's such a great thing to get to do, and massively encouraging for us, and hopefully worth a lot to them, as well as an exciting opportunity here, because eagle-eyed viewers may guess that we're both blokes.
Yes, that's why I had spotted that.
Which in itself is not a bad thing. I'm not
No,
going to go that far.
No, that's, I think you can go there without too much controversy.
Thank you. But we've got some fantastic young people who are not blokes and who would benefit even more from other not blokes in the church who have masses of wisdom to share. If they'd be interested in doing a little bit of one-to-one with meeting up some alone people.
Adding on to this, I was actually going to talk a little bit about what our one-to-ones have looked like and how actually to encourage people who are either in our church or are thinking about doing one-to-ones with maybe their youth or something outside of our church as well. Our one-to-ones look very, very different depending on who you're talking to. When you're talking to those younger children, because I think the model is that once they come out of year 6, we want to invite them at the very least along to do something. You can start that one-to-one at a more conversational level that is more about just building that relationship so that they feel like they can trust and talk to you, asking questions about what they've heard about on Sunday and being willing to sit and pray with them consistently. But actually that consistency goes a really long way in that child's life long term, and you don't need to be a trained youth worker to do that. And actually if you're a church family member who feels even they could just give up an hour of their week at some point to sit in a coffee shop with a kid and just sit, pray with them and take a genuine interest in where their faith is at, that's hugely impactful, and it pays dividends all the way down the line. And I think, having said that too, equally, one of our youths is on fire with his faith and has fantastic conversations, and I've been meeting with him now for a couple of years. And our conversations tend to lead us into deeper things. So we've talked about, we've been going through Luke recently, but the way that we've been learning about that, as opposed to how I maybe do it with a different child, is that we've been doing it from the standpoint of how would you prepare a talk on this passage? How would you do that? With the goal being of discipleship, preparing for a point where, if he goes to university or if he gets asked to do something in college, that he doesn't feel like he goes, I'm not sure what to do with the Bible here. How do I communicate it to others? And so even though that might be a little perhaps more advanced, and I wouldn't necessarily say anybody could just drop in and do that, I would encourage you that there are ways of helping within that area of ministry one-to-one without needing it to feel as overwhelming.
Yeah, and we've said it a lot of times, and you've said it, you've both said it a lot, and we need to keep saying it, don't we, that it is just about taking a genuine interest. It's about building a church family which works like a family's supposed to, and the best families are always intergenerational.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do, and it doesn't. And I think, though obviously I'm far too young, I think when you become a grandparent, I don't believe you get any training. I think you just have to work it out.
I still believe there's kind of a secret training.
You think there is a training?
But I'm not.
Okay, to be fair, there's one or two people we could ask.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe they can't tell us about it until we're qualified. But that's the subject for that particular conspiracy theory is the subject of a whole different set of podcasts.
I look forward to that episode.
Yeah.
But there's a great thing about perspective, isn't there? That actually there's stuff. I think everyone guesses that if you're under 28 and in youth work, then that works automatically.
Yes.
Because you know everything. We don't. I don't know still what a skibidi toilet really is.
I'm missing much if I'm honest.
But what we can't offer as much as others is such a perspective and experience of saying, I've been there and done that for way more than you.
Yeah.
And we can say, I remember GCSE stress and I got past it. But it's even better sometimes to have someone who says, I don't remember GCSE. It's not even worth that.
Yes. Yes. In perspective, now that a few more years have passed, this is not the thing that's shaped my life in the way that it feels like it's going to.
Yes. Sometimes someone being able to say, do you know what? The way your life is not like a universal constant. That thing that seems like the biggest thing in the world, it didn't even exist, and in another 5 minutes it probably won't again. So don't worry. The message is you're not too old for youth work. You cannot be.
So I think twin messages. There's at least 3 here. Send your children to 6 o'clock.
Yes, yours, someone else's, any kids.
Yeah.
11 to 18.
Come to the evening service at 7.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. And then finally, think about how you might get involved in the intergenerational ministry, which is youth work.
Yeah.
And that probably is the end of this.
Oh no, I'm not cutting that out.
So we're coming rapidly to the end of our first ever.
No.
You're afraid so? All good things, James.
All
must
good
come
things.
to an end. So we're approaching the end of this first sort of trial, experimental,
Yep.
first go.
It's
at
been
the
a trial,
Sometimes you can all on the straight and narrow.
Yeah,
on
good luck with
topic.
that.
Yes. Difficult as ever. But anyway, so we're coming to the end of this first podcast, and we've spent a lot of our time talking about updates, new developments in youth and children's work. But I just wanted to ask both of you, perhaps start with you, Adam, what other topics are you thinking that we might cover? What do you envisage that we'll talk about in future episodes of these podcasts?
This is embarrassing because I wrote this question and I haven't thought about what my answer would be. But I'm looking forward to all sorts of things and hopefully getting some guests on. So if you're out there and you're listening, firstly, hooray, someone found us. And secondly, we may soon be tapping you on the shoulder and saying, can we pull you in to get you on the pod to talk about what you're involved in, whether it's TOTS. Now that would be an entertaining episode.
Good point.
Because TOTS is a delight and it's mental.
I may have a contact there.
Yeah, I hear you. Or Sanctuary or the Flood Defence Group, whoever you are. It's going to be nice to talk to you and hopefully to hear that you've been listening and have some thoughts one way or the other about the podcast going forward.
Yeah, all good thoughts, Adam. James, anything to add?
Just before we get, that was a really good piece of tutorial technique. Let me say, I think you learned a lot at university, didn't you? About
I got
how to flannel. That was a really good 2 minutes of.
I thought
really not having thought of the answer at all. Well done.
I've seen
That's
you
good.
doing a talk.
It's good.
You should do less preparation more often.
Yeah, it's an important skill. So I have a good think about this. So I think we do want to hear about what's happening at church, and this is the exciting thing about this for me is some of the things we just don't get to talk about on a Sunday because there's not always time, and we don't get to talk about them at any other forum as well. So it's just nice to say, okay, this is what we've been up to. So that's part of it. So that's a little bit today, isn't it? That some people will know about the Salt Cafe thing, but others won't. I think there is an opportunity for us to perhaps do some Bible in here. So I haven't quite worked out how we do this, but I think once we finish the Bible overview, because we won't do it again for another 3 years face to face, we might find a way of chunking that up a little bit and doing little bits of that and sticking that on the podcast. I mean, that would be about 273 episodes on its own, but that's all right. I think, long form and all that. So that would be good to do. I think I am looking forward to inviting guests onto the podcast as well. That'll be good to do that as we go forward. But yeah, I think, who knows? I think there's a lot of possibilities and we just need to look forward to exploring them. But as you said, it would be good to hear what people think and be nice. Remember what your mum said. If you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say anything. But it would be good to get some feedback about how this has been, and the kind of things that might be helpful to hear. Because from our perspective, we just want people watching, listening to this to know a little bit more, to be a little bit more encouraged about what's happening at St Albans and St Paul's.
Yeah, so if somebody other than Emma and Aoife and Kirsty are watching this, tell us what you'd like to feature. So those are some of our initial thoughts and ideas about future topics and subjects that we're hoping to cover in this podcast. But I guess, if there's people are listening to this other than Emma, Aoife and Kirsty, hopefully, if you are the other listener, tell us what else you would find helpful to be featured in these future episodes of our as yet unnamed podcast.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thanks.